Now to the labor market, which has been the pillar of strength in this economy, but Double Line's Jeffrey Gunlock doesn't think that will persist.
I really believe that layoffs are coming.
Bay Area-based LinkedIn has announced layoffs. The company says it's planning to cut 668 workers.
The second largest auto insurance company in the United States is now going to be laying off about 6% of its total workforce.
I have been laid off 3 times in my professional life. Now, I don't know if that makes me the best person to make this video or if that makes me the worst person to make this video, but nowadays I work as a literal job market analyst. So I want to take some time today to help you understand what your layoff risk is, why certain jobs are considered layoff-proof in a recession, and how you can get one of those jobs regardless of if you have a computer science degree, an English degree, or literally anything in between. Any company with 100 or more employees has to provide at least 60 calendar days notice before laying off any of their staff. This is called the WARN Act, and it's something that's publicly available on every state government's website. You can type in something like WARN Act Washington, and it will pull up exactly what companies have laid people off this year and what companies will be laying off people in the state of Washington in the next 60 days. You can also see what types of layoffs are happening. So like, for example, you'll see that these Targets were closed and that's why they laid off staff, but you'll also see that places like Epic Games have laid off 39 Washington employees because game development is a plague on workers' rights. And so if you're, say, a tech worker or somebody in a particularly layoff-happy industry, you can use the WARN Act to give yourself 2 months of notice. That way you can build up your resume and start interviewing for positions in a more secure industry. But what industries are actually secure? Well, most people assume that jobs with federal or state government agencies are inherently recession-proof because you can't get fired under the protection of Uncle Sam, which is kind of true, but let me explain. Government jobs fall under the same categories that all jobs fall under. You've got temporary hourly wage positions, you've got non-exempt hourly positions, and then you have exempt benefited full-time positions. And those are the jobs that it's extremely hard to get fired from. And all of those jobs are going to be on usajobs.gov or on your particular state's hiring portal. A lot of people can't find them because they're not on LinkedIn, they're not on Indeed, and they also don't use the same resume that you would use when applying to jobs in the private sector. Unlike typical resumes, which are a summary of the education, skills, and experiences you have that directly relate to a job, a federal resume is a long-form list of basically everything that you bring to the table. All of your education, all of your work experience, and a bunch of additional information like volunteer experience you might have had, languages you might speak, as well as certain details that you don't normally put on a resume, like how many hours a week you worked, what your rank was, if that's applicable, what your supervisor's name was, what their contact information is, literally everything. Now, there are some really good guides out there on how to write an effective federal resume that I will just simply link in the description below, because talking about that here would be way too long of a video that nobody wants to watch. But generally speaking, your federal resume is going to have your education, work experiences, technical skills, certifications, languages that you speak, volunteer experience, any awards or accomplishments that you have, your professional affiliations, and then references from your previous jobs. You also want to make sure on a federal resume that your bullet points aren't too job description-y or cliche. Really what these agencies are looking for are challenges that you faced, actions that you've taken, and the results that's followed up from whatever action that you've taken. This is referred to as the CAR method, and it's the preferred sentence structure when you're writing your context on a federal resume. So as long as you're including those sections, and as long as you're using the CAR method to write your bullet points, you will almost certainly get interviewed, assuming you have the baseline qualifications, for any federal position that you apply to. And I'm typically able to assume when a student isn't getting interviewed for federal jobs that they're not following the instructions that were laid out for them in some way. See, when you're working for the literal bureaucracy of a giant, complicated country like the United States, following specific rules and regulations is extremely important. And so these seemingly unnecessary rules are built into federal applications almost as an initial test to see if you're able of reading and following instructions accurately. But you might look at that and think, gee, that's a pain in the ass. Is it even worth it to get a federal job? And the answer is maybe? Certain industries like aerospace, cybersecurity, agriculture, and environmental science have a ton of jobs that are housed in federal and state agencies. And these agencies also need people like IT personnel, writers, accountants, scientists, and literally everyone in between in order to do the work that they do. So if you're in a certain job where a layoff is likely, or if you just live somewhere where there's not a lot of good economic opportunity available in the private sector, getting a government job is a really effective way in order to land a middle-class salary and in order to give yourself really good job security. And that's why those jobs are generally considered layoff-proof during an economic recession.